Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Ascension Playground. This is your friend Ursie, and today I'm joined on the playground with a dear healer and friend, Mike. So, Mike, welcome, welcome. Isn't it amazing? We
Thank
just we got to reintroduce ourselves recently.
you. Yes, that was quite nice. It was good to see you.
I know I don't remember how many years back, but we had a common friend who was like the anchor for this light transmission. And so many of us gathered around Gabrielle and
Yeah.
my friend Kathy and Jennifer, and I got to meet you and so many others. So gosh, I would say at least 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, if not more, but yes, it's been quite a while. A long, long journey in between and lots of fun.
Yeah, and in some ways it's like starting where we left off, but another level, it's like, wow, the acceleration of what we're here to do, the clarity around healing.
Yes.
And so I think we met with an all things metaphysical, looking at astrology or psychic mediumship. But today the focus we'll talk about is you, Mike, your path for personal growth. And tell us a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, because I think as we learn about your story, someone listening might be able to relate and go, oh, me too. And then the
Sure.
joy is really to see of how you took some of the hard lessons of life to inform you of what was working and what wasn't, and how you chose
Right.
healing, and not just any healing, but alternative modalities with a strongly divinatory kind of essence to them. So I'm going to
Yes.
give it over to you, Mike. Tell us
All
your
right.
story and path.
So at about 2.5 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night with a flame dancing on my chest. And I woke up because I needed to use the restroom. But anyway, after I woke up, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm on fire. And I started swatting this thing. And each time I did, it moved. And I thought, this is strange. And I stopped, and then it slowly diminished down. And I heard the words, everything will be all right. And I thought, what does that mean? And then I got up, went used the restroom, came back, and I thought, oh my gosh, my covers are going to be burned. My parents are going to be upset. And I straightened them out, and there was no burn mark, no anything. And so I went back to bed, told my mom the next morning, and she said, oh, you were probably just dreaming. But I know for a fact I wasn't. Then at about 3 years old, I drowned down at the local beach at Lover's Point in Pacific Grove, was brought back, resuscitated. And after that went through lessons of how to swim, which helped tremendously. Then at about 6 or 7 years old, I started experiencing mediumship and spirits. By 10 years old, I was doing healing work on people. And back then, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was mostly giving of my own energy to help them to heal. And later on, took lessons, so I learned not to use my own energy. At 16, I had read lots of books, and I had experienced an entity as I parked my car in the front of our house that was there. It was a female, and I thought, what's going on? And so I talked to her for a little while, and talking to earthbound spirits, or what we refer to as ghosts, are just like talking to people, except they don't have a body. And so I spoke to her, uh, talked with her for quite a while, found out that she had had a, an abortion, and she felt, because she had killed a child, an infant, a baby, that she would be going to hell. And I spoke to her about that and talked to her about how religion has changed and how different things have changed. and how she will be forgiven, and she could go ahead and cross over into what we call heaven. And because I had read in Sylvia Browne's book about this, I thought, okay, let's do this. I've never done it before, but this lady definitely needs it. So I created a shaft of white light for her, asked her to look into it. And as she did, she could see her husband waving to her, and she could see her infant waving to her as well. And so she stepped into that light and crossed over. And that was the first of many times that I've helped people cross over. At 23 years old, my father passed away. He was a dowser and also a healer. And unfortunately, I didn't get to learn about all of his experiences. He was born in 1910, and he was 48 when I was born. But we did spend some time together, and he talked about his dowsing and how he could find water and how he could find other things. One of the farmers lost his favorite knife and asked my dad, Pete, to come and see if he could find it. And sure enough, he could and found it. And so from there on, it led to more people and wanting his help. Then at 32, I got married, had a child 4 years later, and started my family life. And I started to get more pull towards becoming more spiritual. So I started again reading more books. A friend was also very spiritual, and I was connecting with her and talking with her, and she was invited me to join a group called the SOBs, which are spiritually oriented business people. Great name. And there I met my first teacher, and she taught me how to do hands-on healing and how to do many different things. Dowsing. Eventually, I learned channeling from her, um, working with tarot cards, all kinds of different things, how to remove cords from people that are connected, and how to reestablish them with love, or how to not allow them to connect again. From there, I started meeting more people in the group and learning from many different people, growing, and I started doing healing work in 2009 at my house. I had purchased a massage table and got to work. In 2012, I established my business. In 2015, I had a website and was going full blast. Went through the challenges of fear of stepping out of the closet, we sometimes refer to it as, and getting in front of people. And when people would ask, what do? You have this kind of fear about saying, oh, I'm a healer. And so that was a bit challenging. And I know a lot of people go through that. But once you start standing in your power, everything unfolds, and it becomes so much easier because you have your guides, your crew, all the angels, everybody helping you to do what your calling is. And it was just really magical. I would ask for those in need of healing to be brought to us so that we could do the healing and help them. And they started showing up. Then I ended up getting divorced in 2014. It we had grown apart. I had become very spiritual, and my ex-wife had not. And she was open to it, but not as open as I needed. And so we went our separate ways, and that helped me to grow tremendously. And it's hard to let go of people that you love in that way. But it needed to take place. So now I'm doing it full time. I have my own business in Monterey. And then on Mondays, I'm up in SoCal at Avalon Visions doing work there. We have wrote a psychic fair that's going to be there this coming weekend on Sunday, and looking forward to that. We'll be outside doing work, and when you're out in nature or just outside, healing is much stronger for some reason. I think it's because we're closer to nature,
Yeah. Well, if
but
I
it's
could just
wonderful.
interrupt you for just a second, I am
Sure.
just so fascinated by how a 2.5-year-old can remember, like in such vivid detail, um, that experience. And I guess that might have just been such a um, mind-altering experience that, you know, major turning point in a young child's. I mean, you're just a baby, really, two and a half.
Yeah,
And then to have another you know strange experience, not much after that. But so far what I've logged is, let's see, you drowned and were resuscitated. You
yes,
have met like a ghost or someone who didn't want to go to the light because they were afraid of the quote unquote judgment that
right.
was perhaps in her upbringing and the social environment, that abortion equals hell and damnation. So this
Yes,
idea of trying to coax someone back into, I would say we're living in the third dimension, and perhaps that astral um, realm of the fourth dimension, trying to move them back into the cycle of letting go of the third dimension. So, anyone listening, if you're afraid of quote unquote ghosts, it's just more about a door that opens as we, drop our bodies and move back to the source that we came from as our fuller self and soul. But my God, to have these images and then to know out in the public that you could feel like energy being released from you, but then learning and meeting a network of people that had similar experiences. Whereas with an older father not being able to be taught and trained, in his wisdom with what's called dowsing. And so,
yeah,
dowsing, if you don't want to get even into metaphysics, it's really just how to find water. And it's an
yeah,
ancient art, and they have dowsing conferences. So it doesn't
yes,
have to be where science and spirituality meet. It doesn't have to always be so woo woo spiritual, that there are practical ways of, if you want to see, do I have water on my property? And if so, how do I find the well? So I think
yeah.
what your story is offering is really not just, you're not just totally out there working with ghosts and spirits and whispering,
Oh
like
no.
in between the realms. But I just want to add to this little recording that when you and I met, I was saying hello, and this woman and I both walked into Avalon store and healing center, and you didn't know this woman, and all she could do is come right out and comment about your eyes and how your eyes were carrying so much love in them. And I looked at you and I said, "Hey, Mike," and the idea of the eyes and the light that she could see from you. And it turns out, yes, she was a teacher for 30 years in the school system, moving now into her own joy of metaphysical, multidimensional healing. It's not
Yeah,
for like in the dark room, looking at crystal balls and looking at the future. Instead, it's where we're starting to move much more into this idea of we're way more than we can imagine. But your
yeah,
story began really at this idea of a 2.5-year-old having a pivotal experience.
yeah, yeah. It was so profound that I could remember it just like it happened yesterday, and it was just something that I knew had tremendous meaning. And it wasn't until later that it all unfolded.
Wow. Well, I just stand in awe for you and others that I've met on the playground that when you really allow yourselves to share what really happened, that you can remember the idea that these windows and portals can open up for um, experiences that are beyond our five dimension or five senses, excuse me. So
Yes.
the five senses, that there's more to us than meets the eye, so to speak. And I believe more and more are being born now with these abilities to like talk telepathically, communicate, to heal in distance. And so we're going to get into that now in the current life where you've shared with us, here's my path. It wasn't, let's say, normal. I love that you had the family life. And when it was time, unfortunately, to like say goodbyes to loved ones, that it was done, it feels like, with the grace of that's a chapter, but I love myself enough to know this is what I need going
Yes.
forward in this next chapter of really for your fuller, authentic self to come forward. And I love the SOBs that you bring spirituality into business. But let's look at today because you mentioned your website. And for anyone listening, this is we're calling in from California. So you've got the Monterey Bay, and Mike, you're from the Pacific Grove region, but now you're living more in the Monterey Bay upper area, and having an office in Monterey, but also in Santa Cruz on Mondays. So it's nice to see that you're transporting yourself to offer healing sessions to people basically in the Bay Area side of the ocean.
Yes.
Yes. So if anyone wants to find Mike and his services, you look under Mike Dinkel with a Kel, dinkel.com. And so here we go. In fact, here's the map, right? I was just talking about here's
Yes.
Monterey Bay. So you have one office that you rent here in Monterey in the downtown area, it looks like. And then the other is up here in Capitola, Soquel area, um,
Yeah.
which is south of Santa Cruz City itself. So here we go. Now, you offered me an in person healing through Avalon, and I will say, um, I have had Reiki sessions, I've had remote healing. Yours was unique. I'm just going to shout out, it's your voice. There's something in the color and timbre of your voice that makes me feel like things are really grounded deeply into Mother Earth. And there, for me, is this okay, I'm anchored. I'm not going to be sent out there. And then this woman commenting about the light and the angels that were coming in around you. So
Yes.
I want to get to that story that you shared with me in a minute, but here's your website. You do offer cranial sacral therapy in person where the hands are, it's not massage, it's really light touch and it's energy work working around very specific points of the body. But if you're not able to come visit Mike in person, this idea of remote healing, distance healing is available, and also remote psychic readings, mediumship. Oh, communicating with loved ones who have passed. So, and then here's where you can book a session. Well, this your website just opens up a ton of questions for me, and I'm just trying to figure out, okay, where to start. Ah, here's a great place to start. Since you gave me a session, I felt like there was like a something with my neck. Whenever I get a massage, I get touched there, I go electric. And I just kind of looked at that behind my neck as okay. And you sensed in my personal session that it was a pinched nerve. But you see,
Wow.
it's more than physical. I really felt you were helping align my whole self. And then how you explained to me the spine and the vagus nerve. And so that was the physical aspect. So, anyone listening, if you want to really understand how the body carries messages for you, and the story that I'm going to put you on the spot was with this idea that there was a person you were giving a healing with, and Jesus came in. So I'm going to
Oh, yes.
mute myself. If you wouldn't mind, could you share that story? Because I thought that was
Sure.
so beautiful.
So a friend of mine approached me and told me of her friend that had cancer, inoperable lung cancer. It was in his right lung and had gone down into his shoulder. And so I knew of this person, but I didn't know them. They were 2 years older than me in high school, and they went to the same high school I went to. And so I said, sure, let's do it. I've never worked on somebody with cancer before, and I thought, healing takes place. It always does. So let's go. So I got there, and I had him laid out in front of me, and I've worked with Jesus many times and angels, and Jesus was on the other side of the massage table, and he said, okay, we're going to work together this time. And I said, okay, great. And I'm thinking, we're going to do the same thing. He's going to be there, I'm there, and we work on this gentleman. But what happened was he turned around, stepped back through the gentleman and into me, and I could feel him in me. And it was incredible. I mean, suddenly I had a much longer beard and a robe on, and it was just very magical. Anyway, we started working on this gentleman, and basically we stood there, and I had my hands like this out in front of me, sending energy down into him, and we both were together doing this. And then these little things would come out from the left and come down and grab some stuff that looked kind of like slime, the green slime, but gelatinous stuff, and fly off with it. And I'm watching this taking place and this going on, and I said to him, shouldn't we be doing something more? And he said, no, we're holding space so that they are able to do the work that they're doing. And he said, right now they're removing the cancer. And then as they were doing that, other angels came in, and they would take their fingers and run it along the cancer lines and bring it down into the area where the mass was, and where what I found out later were healing angels would come and grab this stuff and fly off. And they would move this cancer out of the arm and down into the lung and bring it all together. And we were working on him for almost an hour and a half. And you could see this mass that was huge get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as they would come down, grab this, and fly off. And it got down to about the size of an orange or a tennis ball. And then Jesus said, we're going to stop here, and we'll finish up next time we get together. And I said, okay, great. So we stopped. I told the gentleman, that we're done. And he said, wow, I feel a lot better. And he goes, thank you. And, we talked a little bit, and then I left. This was on Wednesday. On Thursday, he went into the local hospital to get the tattoos on his body to do the radiation work, so they could pinpoint exactly where the radiation needed to go in his body. And in doing that, they did a CT scan. And in that scan, they found out that the cancer had actually shrunk to the size of an orange or tennis ball. And he called me on Sunday to tell me this. He said, Mike, and he's a funny guy. He goes, you won't believe this. My doctor called me up on Sunday. On Sunday, I'm laughing. He said, and the cancer has shrunk down to the size of an orange, and they can go in and remove it. And he said, I told the doctor a healer worked on me, and the doctor said, well, I don't know if it was the healer that did it or if it was your first session of chemotherapy that did it, but whatever did it, it's shrunk down and we can go in and operate and remove it. And he said, "What do you think, Mike?" And I said, "Well, I think that's great, but let me tell you what actually happened." And because I didn't know this gentleman, I didn't talk to him about the angels. I didn't talk to him about Jesus. I didn't know what his spiritual thoughts were. And now I've learned no matter what you tell, you talk, you tell the whole story, everything that took place. And I always have been since then. Great learning. So I told him all that took place. And he was like, "Wow, why didn't you tell me this?" And I said, "Well, I didn't know what your beliefs were." And he goes, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, we have a session planned. You know, we were going to get together next Wednesday and do it again." I said, "I would have the people that shrunk it down, Jesus, remove it completely. But that's my thoughts." And he goes, "But my insurance will cover the operation all completely. It'll take care of everything." And I said, "Well, it's up to you. It's your body. You have to decide what you want to do." Personally, I would have the people, Jesus and the angels, remove it completely. But it's up to you. You have to decide. And he goes, "Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and have the operation and have it removed. The doctor has scheduled me for Monday morning and they can take it right out." And I said, "Well, that's great. You know, that'll be good." So he had the operation. We canceled Wednesday. It wasn't until I think Friday that we got together after he got out of the hospital. And you know, it was a few days after that. But being is the cancer got into one of his ribs and started growing. And they did a scan of a few days or I think a week and a half later to check
Oops.
remove that cancer, and we're able to do that. Long story short, he continued to get radiation treatments and chemotherapy treatments, and he eventually passed away. I believe because of the chemotherapy treatments and radiation. But what happened was he had a death sentence. Basically, he had been told that he could die at any time and would probably pass within the next 3 to 4 months. He lived another 8.5 months and was able to spend time with his grandchild, say goodbye to friends, spend time with family, and it extended his life. And it was a learning for me too that not everybody can be saved, and for when it's your time to go, it's your time. That can sometimes be extended, like in this case. And but your time to go is when you're done here, and that's when you ascend. And that was hard for me because I thought we can heal this gentleman, we can get him back on his feet, you know, and I was all gung ho and learned the lesson. So learned a lot of important things.
Wow. Sorry if my internet connection was a little unstable for some of that. I think we got it all though. This is a story that you're sharing that I could hear over and over again and still get the chills. And then I love the lesson about telling the whole story as the messenger, not afraid of, if I deliver the full truth, how will the person take it? And so this
Right.
idea of, yeah, angels and Jesus, but when you say it, and this idea, because I've heard this story before from other healers, I think I shared with you, it reminded me of some of those Filipino surgeons,
Oh,
psychic surgery, but it
right.
requires, this idea of, where are your belief systems tied? If you're going to come in and try and heal someone that's resistant and says, "No, I don't believe it. My wife wants me to do this, but I don't believe it," it's not going to have the impact. And also, your thought that, yes, there's a moment of time, if it is fated, as far as that's your exit point, and then being gifted the extra months is huge. But this idea that I think that we have many different exit points in a human lifetime, and working with our counsel or our team, our higher self, it's this idea, well, is it time? Because sometimes we just say, it's time, I want off planet. And we're saying that out of frustration, out of despair, out of the depths of depression. But when it is really time, then it's just looking at, look at the gift the man who came to you gave you, though, that you could actually see that it was chronicled in his, his medical record and the
Yeah.
x-rays, etc. So it was as much, I think, a gift for him as it is for you. And then for you sharing it just makes me go, all right, I'm calling in Jesus. I'm aligning with the ascended master or the healers that I know, align with my belief system as it is in this moment.
Yes. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Fascinating. I just love how you're able to step more into, this is what I saw. This is who I am. This was from the beginning of the 2.5-year old. I didn't have those experiences, Mike. You do. And so I love that you're able now to offer in-person sessions. It can be about the body. It can be also for those who are perhaps, if I could say, feeling depressed or
Yeah.
anxious. Before we started recording, I was commenting how CNN was posting how many people have died this year in America of depression or suicide, let's just
Yeah.
say. I was like,
Yes.
what? And I honor that those are choices, but
Yeah.
if there's someone available to help, hey, how do I come back into alignment? I don't want to feel this way. Or I have a
Right.
loved one or a young teenager. Um, so could you share now about current time? Maybe for those who don't know, what is remote healing and how do you work with a person you haven't met yet?
That's a good question. So what I like to do is get a picture of the person so I can look into them. Um, but it's not always necessary and it isn't always possible. Um, I've worked with people, gosh, in Brazil, in Peru, in Germany, in the United in Croatia, and in Israel, and all over the United States. I imagine them in front of me, but instead of being on a massage table and their head is way down at this end and their feet are down at this end, I shrink them down to be right in front of me. So their head is here and their feet are here, and they're just much smaller. And then I start working on them the same way I would a body that is in front of me, and saying prayers, saying opening prayers, saying, balancing their chakras, scanning their body for uh, resistance or what are called energy cysts or blockages of energy, where energy doesn't flow through their body easily. Um, and then work on them just like they're right in front of me. Um, I almost always get intuitive messages. I always ask, what does this body need? What can you tell me about this body? And what can I pass on to this person about their body to help? Sometimes I actually get messages and I'll start free writing these messages, writing everything down as it's brought into me. They'll got their guides will talk to me and talk about things that need to be done, um, forgiveness work that needs to be done, any number of things. It's quite amazing.
Is
And
that where the
it's
term, I'm sorry, is that where the term full bodied channel, like you're just opening up yourself?
yes, yes. So I'm a channel as well. And I channel. Um, so free writing is like channeling. Um, it's just putting a pen and paper in front of you and asking a question and then listening for words. And whatever words come to you, you start writing them down.
Mm.
And pretty soon they start making sense. And pretty soon you're writing things you would never have thought of. Um, and so when the guides of the client start speaking, then I start writing and writing all this down.
Wow, that is fascinating because it's this idea of allowing like God or spirit, the higher self of the other person to not even label, but to trust what wants to come through. Because I have studied all things healing, not for myself so much as my loved ones and family members, but it's intrigued me on a real deep level. So, people who might be listening at an advanced, let's say, astrology level, it's really looking at, my gosh, what are the markings for a healer? When you start talking about galactic support, who are the star families and star nations, perhaps energetically also kind of trying to make contact, to support the awareness, because we're not necessarily open to learning if everything is fine and dandy, if we're in love and joy and bliss. It's those times
Right.
where it's crunch time, where our body is in pain, or a loved one is in pain. How do we bring the fullness when you've tried everything, Western medicine, alternative medicine, all the medicines don't work? And so sometimes I bet people might come to you, Mike, as perhaps the last resort. Like, if everything else fails, if it can't hurt me, why not just try it? Right?
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
And then reading, like with Wayne Dyer and a lot of his books around healing, he would talk about the word heal as connected to the word whole. So when we're whole, we're standing in congruence and coherence, but this wholeness, right? And so we can look at sound healing, energy healing, the Reiki. I think I remember asking you, "Oh, are you sending in particular codes or glyphs into my body?" And you're like, "No," but on the table I had this idea somebody was. And so I played with that idea, not for the fear of it, but for the sheer delight. Like, why would I have that thought? And is that thought mine on the table? Like, they're putting in codes so that I would come into balance. Because if this body is strong, I don't have that pinched nerve, then I see, okay, I'll be of more service. So if you want me to hang around a little bit more, if we have a team agreement, then let's work together. So it's not
Yeah.
always this human body is going to always deteriorate in the way that we imagine in the collective. But if we can imagine ourselves in alignment, in coherence, in whole, to do the type of work you're doing, I would say it really takes this idea of, okay, I don't know where you got the idea to shrink the body, but then to work with whatever comes through. It doesn't have to be prescriptive. I always do it this way. you know?
No, no, you have to be open to all possibilities because you're you're guided and you have to trust that guidance, whether they're remotely in front of you or right there in front of you. Um, and anybody can do healing. As a child, if you bumped your knee, your mom would come up and rub it. And she was sending energy into your knee at that time. She was asking that your pain stop, and her intention was to rub it and stop that pain. And that intention is very powerful. And in that way, anybody can learn to heal.
Wow.
And
I
remote healing is done in the same way. It's easiest explained as most people have experienced the phone call where you're thinking about somebody and a few minutes later you get that phone call.
Yeah.
So you're thinking about them and that energy is going out from you and it goes to them. And they, if they're psychic, would say, "Oh, so and so's thinking about me." But most people just feel that energy and they think, "Oh, Mike is thinking of me," or "I haven't talked to Mike in a long time. I'm going to give him a call."
Yeah.
So that same energy is what I use to send out healing. I send that out to them and they feel it and they respond to it. And that information comes back to me as well as to how they're responding and what needs to be done.
Well, you're reminding me of a story in closing that when on January 6th, when we had the insurrection at the Capitol, I got a phone call that my father had passed on that same day.
Oh,
And he was living in Mexico. So I couldn't go see him or be with him. They needed someone to identify the body. And the border was closed. And so I had such a strong connection to my father that when my mom passed, it didn't hit me this like it did my dad. But my friend Kathy, she says, "We got you covered, Urs. I'm going to call my daughter Jennifer and Mike Dinkel." And he's like, she goes, "You remember Mike? He's a teddy bear of a guy, just big, loving energy." And I'm like, I could barely breathe because I felt like it was not logical for me. I'm like, why can I barely breathe? And I didn't know why I reached out to Kathy, but I just said, and so, it was oh, and so it wouldn't go away until you guys did like a triangle of support. And I said, yes. And I just held whatever needs to be lifted. And so Mike, I never got to personally thank you, and I think that was what, a couple of years ago. Well,
yeah.
January 6th, and then to be able to see you again and have a session, I just want to say yes. When we start thinking like, oh God, this issue has come up and I thought I was fine, oh yeah, okay, but I needed help. And so anyone listening, I would just say, if you've tried everything else, let's just say, and it hasn't worked, trust your gut and get to know the energy of a potential healer. And so this is a joy to be able to bring you forward, Mike, on the Ascension Playground, so other people could like feel and tune into your story, your energy. And my friend Jimmy, we've had Jimmy come on the playground too. He and I met through what's called Eric Pearl's reconnection healing, working with the axiotonal grids. So it's this idea that we can send love. We are all connected. And if you've tried everything else and are open for loving support with you in control still, because you get to decide yes or no. But if you say yes and you contact Mike, let me go ahead and put your website up again real quick. Here we are. It's mikedinkel.com services. You can book a session online, in person, in Monterey or in Soquel, California. And so let me
Yep.
see here. So any final words, Mike, as far as like what you might think for the future and healing and your services?
Um, just to trust that your body can heal itself. It is designed to heal itself. I mean, if you break your arm, go to a doctor. He can set it and and help it to heal, but your body is what heals that bone. The doctor can only set the bone, and your body takes over from that point, and it heals itself, and it's designed to heal itself. And you have to trust that it will do that. It's when we don't trust, when we think, oh, this, my knee hurts. I'm going to go to a healer, he'll help, and then when I get done, I've had clients say, well, it doesn't hurt at all right now, but when I get out to my car, it's going to hurt. And I said, yes, it will, because you're looking for it. So trust that your body can heal yourself. And in that trust, it happens.
Wow, you just did a paradigm shift for basically, I would say, the American culture, where we were born and raised on this idea: if you get hurt, go to the doctor, trust what the doctor says, and then take your medicine. So it's turning ourselves over to someone else's authority. And what you're saying is
Yes.
reminding us of our own core belief system. My body, okay, what do you need? What's the
Yeah.
blockage about? We can get
Yes.
talking about tapping and all those other things
Oh,
about
yes.
how the body communicates back to us. but it's living, it's breathing, it's listening all the time to our
Yeah.
thinking. And so thank you for reminding me that each of us can step in and say, all right, I believe my body will heal. And
Yes.
if I just need someone like a midwife like you, Mike, to come and just do the prayers and tell me if there's a particular message I might be missing, great, so be it. But that open alignment to, yes, the body will heal when it's ready and when it's given the proper, ingredients like rest and nutrition, etc.
Yes. Exactly.
Well,
Great.
thank you, my friend. Thank you for
You.
helping me when my dad passed. And I have your number, and I'll be coming to see you again soon.
That
So
sounds great.
thank you. And anyone else listening, if you want to join me on the playground, if you found a special healing modality or something that you want to share that you think others might feel inspired, or if you want to let them know that you're here, ready and available to help, as together we move through this ascension process, not just ourselves, not just our community, but with Mother Earth as well. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time on the Ascension Playground.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Bye bye.
Bye bye.